Are you ready?
Yes, ready.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Pony Podcast. Today we are here with Lucy Elder, who is a Horse and Hound journalist. Welcome, Lucy.
Hello.
So we'll start off with just a little rundown of an overview of what your job entails.
Okay, so my normal job, my 9-to-5 job, my role with Horse and Hound is I'm a senior news writer, so that means I'm on the news desk. And basically that covers, it's really broad, which I'm really lucky because it means it's really interesting and really varied. I cover news in anything that affects equestrian sport really, from all the Olympic disciplines to Paralympics to racing. It's really broad. And then of course outside the sports side we have the welfare side, and then even as far as things like government changes and things that are going on in Parliament or the world that would affect horse owners or equestrians or the equestrian industry somewhere along those lines.
Where do you do your research from to find stuff?
I do a lot of it by reading the news. Like the Times, broadsheets, every day I'll try if I can. I start most mornings by doing a trawl of the internet to see what's happened overnight. Of course, BBC News, of course, look at that. Which, when I first got into journalism, I was like, I'm not sure how that would affect it, but it's amazing how many big topics are affecting the equestrian world. So things like that, I'll have a look at, say, a big news story, say, and I don't want to go down this road too much because it's very boring, but Brexit, for example, but then you'd say, well, how might that affect the whole industry, and how might that affect if you can't moving horses across borders and things like that. So a new story on Brexit, which might seem very not horsey, suddenly you think, how can I make that horsey? And then of course I'd read things like Racing Post to see what they're covering, and a lot of other very good websites as well. I find it really interesting, often as well, going off on a slight tangent, to hear how, or to see how other news outlets and especially equestrian media cover similar stories, so I get ideas from that too. So, and then of course I do have a look at social media, is another way I get my news, and then of course events and things that are happening and things that we hear about, so it sort of comes in from different routes really.
Oh, that's really cool. So we've met you here at Burley. What's your role at an event like Burley when you're not at your desk?
It depends really. Again, the office are very good and that we often are doing different roles at events, so there's often more than one of us here. This week I'm being the web reporter, so I'm covering all the event for the website, so the event as it happens, but also breaking news and bits on social media. I'm doing video clips as well, which is good fun, so really fun.
How did you get into journalism?
So I always knew I liked writing when I was at school, and then it sort of progressed from there a bit really. I was really lucky that once I decided, when I was probably about lower sixth maybe, that I liked writing and thought I wanted to do journalism, that I got in touch with a lady here called Hilary Manners, who ran the website Eventing Worldwide, and asked if I could do some reporting at events, because that was what I knew. I've got a horsey background, I liked eventing, I was eventing at the time, and I thought, why don't I see if this is something I want to do? And that was sort of the start of it really, and then from there I studied English at university and did sort of little bits.
We went to the same university. I was at Brookes as well.
Oh my goodness. Oh wow, did you do English too then?
No, I did animal biology and conservation.
Wow.
And here I am.
Oh, brilliant. So, and so English there, bits and pieces of journalism around that. After that I didn't know how to take that next step, if that makes sense. I thought, I've come out of uni, I've got a degree in English, which I'm not sure if that's useful for anything.
I can relate.
And so I did some work experience at various places, local papers and at Horse and Hound as well, and I spoke to a lot of people, and the sort of resounding thing seemed to be you need to do your NCTJ, which that is the governing body for training of journalists in the UK. And so I looked that up and I enrolled on a course at Sports Beat, which is in itself is a big sports news agency, but they also have their journalism training arm, which is News Associates, and I was really lucky to get a place there, and I spent 3 months being drilled on how to be a journalist and to find out if it was actually what I wanted to do. And it turned out that yes, I love sport, I love writing, and sports writing was what I wanted to go into. So that was that. And then do you tell me?
No, it's good. No, it's good.
And then from there I carried on doing other bits of work experience, and I got a job on my first proper job in journalism, as in paid job in journalism, not work experience, was a local paper in Maidenhead, which is nowhere near where I live, but one came up there, and that was brilliant. I think that was the most helpful thing I could have done, because it was constant. It's a weekly, but there were sort of 3 or 4 titles there.
Cool.
And I always say that for every national story you see, that will be local news somewhere, and often the local reporters are people on the ground. So I got a lot of experience going out and about, doing things and having to work to deadlines and having to fill pages when you've got a very small patch at times and you're having to find a front page, and it makes you sort of think quite creatively. And I was so lucky there to have brilliant editors and brilliant people that worked around, and it's really all a product of them that I was just so lucky to get all that advice and just try to take on as much as I could. And it was and then from then I went on to I was there for a couple of years. I did my senior exams, and then I was really lucky to get a job at Horse and Hound.
What do you enjoy most about your job at Horse and Hound?
I enjoy talking to people. I love it when I think I've got an idea for a story and it turns out that there is something there, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And the fact I get to talk to people all day long about something I love doing. I genuinely, every day, it sounds really cliche, but I can't believe how lucky I am to do what I do. And to work with the people, that is another massive thing. To work with the people I work with who are just brilliant in their fields, all of them. And they are so generous with their knowledge and so helpful, and we will bounce ideas off each other. But then also coming to events like this, it's a real privilege, and I don't ever forget that it is a real privilege to be able to come to events like this and to work in media centres with just the best sports writers, the best sports journalists, the best people in the world. And
we've found that as well. I mean, we've been really lucky because we're so small and so new, getting passes to places like this. And we do, like, especially at badminton, where it was our first event, we literally just sat there like, oh my god, Claire Balding's over there.
And look at
oh my god, oh my god. And like just amazing.
Everyone's so helpful, and that's the other thing, that one of the other things that I'd say is one of the best parts of my job is that you can ask people and people will help. And we are, of course, everyone's got their own deadlines, their own competition, but it is a wonderful atmosphere. It's really hard to describe, isn't it, outside when
it's kind of like you're all working for different people, but you're all working on the same thing. So if someone's missed a bit on the commentary, or like this morning someone missed about the prizes for the grooms, so we were all like, oh, did you hear what that was?
Exactly.
Everyone's on the same team, like
exactly.
that kind of feel.
Which is your favourite event to cover?
My favourite event to cover? That's a tricky one. I've been really lucky to do quite a lot of different types of events. This is, funnily enough, the first Burley I've actually covered, and I went to my first championships this year, which was the most exciting thing I've ever done. I'm still sort of off the high of that. That was at Rotterdam. But I really love the grassroots stuff. I really love going point to pointing the weekends in the winter. And then watching. Not quite answering your question here, but I really enjoy watching horses and riders and combinations sort of progress through. And when you followed, say, someone or a horse from sort of low-level events, then you start to see them. If I happen to be covering sort of a bigger event coming through there, that's really exciting. And the same for point to pointing, and then at the finals and things like that. And it's all of those things. The dressage nationals are always a really fun one to cover as well. Again, it's really nice seeing the different disciplines and how lovely and interesting they all are in their own separate ways. But I think if I had to pick one, the favourite event I've ever covered would be Rotterdam European Championships. I'm not sure anything.
The venue looked beautiful.
It was really cool. It was kind of in a woods, and so it was quite not intense, but it was quite atmospheric because it was all quite close, and it was just that level of competition. Of course, Britain winning a medal, 2 medals, and qualifying for Tokyo. It was a gift really of a championship for me to cover, which, and also just so exciting.
It must be so nice that you cover so many different disciplines, that you're not just an eventing journalist or a dressage journalist, that you get to do the whole spectrum of grassroots through to championships and point to pointing.
It is really fun, and it makes it really interesting, and I like doing of course the news is my primary thing. That is what I do sort of day in, day out, and that kind of lends itself to, you have to have a bit of a sort of, you do dabble in all of them, so then when I'm lucky enough to get out reporting and go and do a bit more specific on each one of those, that sort of helps, that all feeds back in really as well. But
what's been your best moment covering an event?
Best moment, trying to think. Best moment, Janelle winning badminton last year. That was unbelievably exciting, and being in the mix zone for that when that happened. And best moment covering an event, it's really hard to pick one out. Give a list. That definitely features quite highly. Bowlesworth, actually, there's been some good puissances. That kind of feeds into what I was saying about watching horses and riders and sort of at different events, and when you start to pick up the story, not just from that event, but the sort of progression, if that's the right word to say. But like Bowlesworth this year, the puissance there was exciting, and the winners there have all on horses that have won at puissances before, and so to see them all together in the same place, that was quite exciting. That was quite exciting actually, when you've got those sort of real stars and going, and also watching some of those horses sort of at the event through the year. And then, for example, watching the progression of like Holly Smith and Heart's Destiny through this year, I've covered them winning and doing well at classes all the way through the year, which I'm very, very lucky to have done, and then to see them do so well in Rotterdam, that was amazing. That was amazing, actually.
So what would be your advice to any aspiring journalists out there?
I'd say read as much as you can, and not just if you think you've got a sort of area of journalism you want to go into, that's brilliant, that's great, but read lots of other things too, and don't think there's one way in, because there's lots of ways in, and lots of people come from it different ways, and which is what's another thing that's so brilliant and so great about the industry. I'd say don't be afraid to ask questions, because the worst thing that can happen is someone says no. But also appreciate that editors are busy as well, but I'd say ask questions and see if you can get work experience. Local papers are a great place to start work experience as well, and you see a lot, and you see how things are put together, and how you start to learn bits of law and things like that from the very start, and how they deal with things, and so that's sort of a good place to start. So just get out there and start asking and seeing if it's what you want to do, because you might think it is, but there's lots of other media jobs as well, so it's a huge industry really, in terms of the whole industry, not just equestrian but sport and beyond that. So there's lots of different things you can be doing, as you guys are here doing podcasts, like I'm here doing the website, there's people here doing magazine reports, there's broadcasters, and beyond that there's so many layers of other things, so there's lots going on.
What is one thing you wish you'd learned sooner?
Oh, there's so many things that I wish I'd learned. I constantly feel like every day I'm learning. One thing that I find I always kick myself for not asking is, sounds basic, but don't ever, if you're thinking of a question when you're speaking to someone and it pops into your head and you think, no, that's a silly question, no, I'm sure that's not, that's, and it could be something really basic like who owns the horse, who actually owns the horse, or or where did you get him from, and things you think have been covered before. it's very, very annoying when you get back to your computer and you start to write it up and you're like, oh, damn it, they've referred to a whole backstory and you hadn't thought to ask for details of that. That's something that I constantly kick myself about, because especially when you're having a conversation, you think, oh yeah, and you think it's all going in and you've got everything. So yeah, that's something that I wish I'd learned sooner, and that I wish I would remind myself of at every event, because but again, it just comes a bit with practice as well, and always, if you can as well, it's often helpful just to grab contact detail from the people you're interviewing as well, because when inevitably you get back and you write something up and you think, oh my goodness, why didn't I ask this, or there's a big hole in this whole thing, it's always handy to be able to quickly check that.
Hello, me again.
Yeah, exactly.
So, final question, what's one thing you couldn't live without?
What can I live without? Decent raincoat if you're going to England, to be honest.
That's
very good. Add some hand warmers to that.
I was thinking about this, it was meant to be sunny and then it rained. I was like, I haven't got a very good raincoat.
I don't think I own a very good raincoat anymore. Actually, no, I've got one like full length, massive one that I took to her. I was working at Horse and Hound, and I took it out with me, and everyone was like, "Why on earth are you taking that? It's going to be sunny all week," and it tipped it down, and I was there in my coat, so smug.
But on the flip side of that, because I am very ginger, sun cream. So things like that, hand warmers. I know that's lots of things I've added to the list, but
good.
A good.
Right, well, thank you so much for talking to us.
And taking the time, because I know you've got a very busy day today.
And so obviously people can read your writing on Horse and Hound, but do you do any, can they find other examples of your work anywhere else, or anything else about you if they want to find out more about your career?
Horse and Hound would be the best place to go, really, as I'm employed full-time by them, so that would be the best place to be for that. So,
And if you guys want to hear more from us, then obviously subscribe to us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, or whatever podcast platform you listen on. Follow us on Instagram at The Pony Podcast. Like us on Facebook at The Pony Podcast. And if you have any topics you want us to talk about, email theponypod@gmail.com. All right.
I hope you stay tuned in, because we have some very exciting interviews coming up this winter on our winter schedule. So looking forward to that.
All right. Bye.